I'm not a big fan of the sandbox crafting genre. I don't dislike any of those games outright, but the genre's major titles like Minecraft, Terraria, and LEGO Worlds have never really interested me. The sole exception to this is 2016's Dragon Quest Builders, an enjoyable and charming sandbox game, albeit one with lots of little frustrations. Just over 3 years removed from the first game, Dragon Quest Builders 2 has now released worldwide, arriving on the 12th of July 2019. But how does this sequel hope to build upon the foundation of the original? Let's find out. This review and the related footage is based on 2 physical retail copies of the game, one for PlayStation 4 and the other for Nintendo Switch. Dragon Quest Builders 2's graphics feature lots of subtle touches that are, quite frankly, stunning. Lighting effects are beautiful, including some impressive volumetric god rays, and the game has dynamic shadows to interact with the improved lighting. In addition, the texture work is great as well, both from block to block as well as on a more all-encompassing level. There aren't any PlayStation 4 Pro specific features in Builders 2, but the game still looks brilliant in 1080p. On Nintendo Switch, there are some visual downgrades to keep in mind. The Switch version runs at 720p and has some lower resolution textures, reduced water effects, and a shorter draw distance. Regardless, the Switch port still looks nice, especially in handheld mode. Across all iterations, Builders 2's graphical presentation is great, perfectly blending the blocky Minecraft style aesthetic with the visual flair of the Dragon Quest series. The main issue with the game's visuals, however, is the frame rate. To demonstrate this, here are some clips from Digital Foundry's side-by-side comparison. PlayStation 4 and PlayStation 4 Pro systems run the single-player campaign at a near seamless 60 frames per second, with standard model PS4s dipping a little lower than Pro systems on average. On the other hand, the Nintendo Switch version has solo play running between 24 to 30 frames per second, which isn't great. It's definitely still functional, but the Switch frame rate is all utility and no luxury. Additionally, loading into user-created levels on any system causes a notable frame drop. PS4 Pros can drop as low as 17 FPS, and Nintendo Switches can drop into the single digits. These are the most extreme cases, as user-created levels can simultaneously display tons of different geometry and textures to interact with the dynamic shadows and advanced lighting. But even less extreme cases still result in noticeable frame rate degradation. If you anticipate playing more than a handful of user-generated areas, I recommend shying away from the Nintendo Switch version and leaning towards the PlayStation 4 Pro for the best results. Aside from the frame rate issue, the weakest aspect of the entire game is the combat. It's not bad by any means, just incredibly basic. Gone are the refined turn-based mechanics of the core Dragon Quest games, replaced instead with a simplistic hack and slash. Hitting triangle on PS4 or Y on Nintendo Switch will do a basic attack, and holding the button down will do a charged attack. NPCs can join the fray too, and it's up to the player to properly arm and equip the townsfolk with appropriate gear for the ensuing confrontations. The most complex battles, however, will still involve running around enemies to avoid taking damage while poking at them to slowly whittle away at their health meters. The combat is completely fine, but to say it's anything else is an exaggeration. In terms of quality, the music is a step up from the combat. Dragon Quest Builders 2 features a MIDI-synthesized soundtrack much like Dragon Quest XI. However, the music is more befitting of the simplistic presentation of Builders 2, and it complements the gameplay well. While the soundtrack isn't remarkable by any means, it gets the job done, with a few individual songs standing out above the rest. The story of Dragon Quest Builders 2 continues the formula established by its predecessors. Where Builders 1 saw players face off against the Dragon Lord from 1986's Dragon Quest, Builders 2 pits players against the villains of Dragon Quest II, with Hargon and the Children of Hargon returning in the antagonistic role. Meanwhile, Dragon Quest II's other villain, Malroth, suffers from amnesia and takes on a human form rather than his scaly demon form. Malroth ultimately decides to join the player in the fight against the forces of Hargon. It's not the grandiose JRPG adventure scene in Dragon Quest proper, but the story isn't the main focal point of the game. It's merely there to give motivation for traveling from place to place. The journey's major beats are simple enough. Find a new town, build it up, and then leave for the next city. In between new towns, you'll return to your hub island to construct your own civilization, complete with NPC townspeople recruited from the places you've rebuilt. While the gameplay loop of the outlying towns is much more task-oriented than the first game's more open-ended design, the hub city is where Builders 2 really shines. Sure, rebuilding other towns is fun, but bringing all the new materials and newfound knowledge back to your own civilization and crafting a town that is limited only by your imagination is by far the best part of the entire game. The main draws of the game are the crafting and building components, and the core mechanics are better than ever. There are so many quality of life improvements over the original Dragon Quest Builders. The most important change is the removal of equipment degradation. You'll no longer have to worry about crafting multiple hammers and multiple swords in case your current gear gets worn down, and you're free to use your equipped hammer and weapon in perpetuity. Additionally, there are secondary tools and added skills that vastly improve the gameplay. For example, the gloves allow you to manipulate the positioning of blocks and objects without having to break them down first. There's the transformer trowel, which instantly swaps out tiles within a selected area, which is great for quickly renovating buildings. The bottomless water jar can quickly dispense or quickly remove water in any environment. There's a glider that makes distant traversal much easier and much more pleasant. You can even click the right analog stick to play in first-person mode, which is a nice addition for anyone more familiar with Minecraft's first-person presentation. First-person mode even has some small gameplay tweaks to make it efficient in its own way, such as allowing you to quickly tile up a column or a row of blocks in whatever direction the guiding arrow is pointing. I mostly use third-person mode, but there are times when first-person mode comes in handy, such as when you're in very tight corridors. One of the biggest additions to the gameplay is the multiplayer. The campaign is single-player only, but the player's Isle of Awakening town can be freely transformed with up to 3 friends. I never got to play with a 4-person party, but teaming up in a pair to build various institutions and structures made the game much more fun and rewarding. These and more small touches remove many of the annoyances present in the first game, ultimately making the primary gameplay of Dragon Quest Builders 2 so much more enjoyable. You'll have to ask yourself a few things before buying Dragon Quest Builders 2. Did you play the first game? If you did, then Builders 2 can be pretty slow to start. Do you plan to explore a lot of user-generated environments? If you are, then prepare to deal with choppy frame rates. And on what system will you be playing Dragon Quest Builders 2? If you're a Nintendo Switch player, keep in mind the lesser performance specifications of that version compared to the PlayStation 4 version. Personally, I really like Dragon Quest Builders 2. Sure, it started off slow, but once I was allowed some freedom, I had a lot of fun. Upon returning to my Isle of Awakening and beginning construction on my personal city, I was even more satisfied. I didn't play a lot of user-created areas, instead mostly sticking with the exclusively single-player story mode. Additionally, anytime I played multiplayer, the game ran very well, so any negatives affected modes and areas that I didn't have a lot of interest in exploring. I also primarily played the PS4 version on the PS4 Pro, so I had a very nice, very smooth experience overall. I can easily recommend the game at $60 for the experience I had. For anybody else, specifically anybody playing on Nintendo Switch, maybe wait for a sale. Regardless, the final question that begs asking is this: is the game fun? Yes, it is. Dragon Quest Builders 2 earns an 8 out of 10 on the PlayStation 4 and a 7.5 out of 10 on the Nintendo Switch. Thanks for watching. Please like, subscribe, and share this video with your friends, and be sure to check out the embedded content on screen. Thanks!